so we don't miss a beat. I'll be posting all the links into the chat again. And so if you have questions after we end today's live session, you're more than welcome to please post your questions on that community link and share it with your colleagues. Let's see, got some more people coming in. This is great. If you do have a question during the live session, please do use the chat or the Q&A from this Zoom. And we'll try to get it answered live for you. Okay, I think we're going to be taking the full hour, so I'm going to say let's go ahead and take it away. Thanks.
Hey, awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. My name is Matt Fisher. And Manish, if we could just go back to that title slide, please. My name is Matt Fisher. I'm a security and risk architect in ServiceNow. I represent our security operations and our risk and compliance integrated risk management products within the DoD and the IC. Today on the call with me, I have Khushbu Doshi, who comes from Accenture Federal Services cyber practice, which is a very large practice. She's going to tell you a little bit more about that, as well as Will Coffey from their digital platforms practice. What this really means is the ServiceNow practice. And today we're kind of doing a joint announcement. We've been working on some solutions towards RMF, both from the ServiceNow side, from the Accenture side, and we wanted to discuss a little bit of what we had there and give AFS a chance to talk about it in a little bit more detail. Now, if you could go to the next slide, please. I do have to do a little bit of housekeeping. Since my portion of the presentation discusses some future-looking product, we have to do kind of the standard disclaimer. This is the safe harbor, and I think we're all used to seeing these. I'm going to discuss an application that is due to release within the next couple of weeks, but since it isn't released yet, it may or may not come to market. It may or may not look the same way or have the same functionality. And I think we all understand that when we're talking about software. So with that, let's begin, please. Manish, thank you. We have a very short agenda today. I'm just going to talk for a few slides about our newest application, continuous authorization and monitoring. And from there, I'm just going to really turn it over to Accenture Federal Services and let them talk about some of the challenges they've seen as experts in the space, living with customers on site, real challenges they've seen in RMF automation firsthand, and how they approach their automation towards that, leveraging ServiceNow, of course, but everything they've built on top of that to build their solution, which they call the Cyber Assurance Integration Framework, or CAF. So next, please. Thanks. So it's hard to do a presentation talking about ServiceNow's risk management capabilities without showing a slide like this. We're very proud of what we've accomplished. We are leading the market in so many different ways. To me, I just can't fathom that our one integrated risk management solution is not only leading 3 separate Gartner Magic Quadrants, but we're also leading the Forrester Wave and other tools. And that's really due, that's a reflection of the investment we've made in the product internally. Next, please. Thanks. That's really a reflection of the investment we've made in the product over the years. Way back in 2015, it was relatively new, but you can see that there's been this very strong growth. So every year, not only do we invest in the development and adding new capabilities to it, but we increase the investment. And every quarter, every release, we come out with more and more capabilities that span vendor risk management, risk and KRI management, policy and control life cycles, business continuity. And now our newest application, next slide, continuous authorization and monitoring. So this is the latest addition to the ServiceNow risk management portfolio. Continuous authorization and monitoring really leverages other capabilities in the ServiceNow platform, right? So ServiceNow gives us this incredible, kind of shared data model, almost a data lake, if you will. and all these wonderful applications around it that make it very easy to build processes and drive work across functional units, and makes it very easy to add in, customized workflows and other unique capabilities. So we used what we had in the platform and we built on top of that to really bring risk management directly applied to RMF. So this is going to be a separate product. It's actually going to be, included with integrated risk management. So it's not a separate SKU or a separate acquisition, but it's a separate product designed specifically for RMF, and it handles the full life cycle from categorizing your systems and dealing with information types and control overlays and control tailoring and inheritance, all the way to driving tasks for, say, security control assessors and driving life cycles around POAMs. And really the idea here is to not just present that control layer and not just automate the active monitoring controls, but really capture all of the work that goes into RMF in a way that really only ServiceNow can do. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Accenture. Now, the reason we have Accenture here is because they've been a key partner in all of this. Obviously, you don't build an RMF solution in a vacuum. This isn't something that we just sent engineers off and they went and did it. We had a lot of help from partners and customers. And we engaged in really kind of a joint development process with Accenture, right to the point of engineers talking to product management and doing lots of previews. And it's been a really wonderful joint venture of ours. And at the same time, there's limitations to what we can do as ServiceNow. We're a software manufacturer. We don't live on site with customers. We don't run programs. And so getting some of that insight from Accenture was very valuable to us, but they're also going to discuss some of the DoD specific capabilities that they've built that really only they could build that we wouldn't be able to. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Khushbu Doshi from the cyber practice to talk a little bit about how AFS works with ServiceNow and how they brought this to fruition. So Khushbu, all yours.
Thank you so much, Matt. Hello, everyone. As Matt indicated, Bill Coffey and I are here to present from the Accenture Federal Services side of the house. So again, welcome everyone. And we will now walk you through the journey we went through as an organization in conjunction with ServiceNow as we've implemented the NIST risk management framework for many of our clients, including federal, DoD, IC clients. What you're seeing here on the slide right now is Accenture and ServiceNow's journey. The key things I actually want to highlight here are that we have 6,800 resources globally, 5,000 projects that we've delivered using ServiceNow integration with Accenture. Also, I wanted to highlight is that 7 of the 42 ServiceNow certified master architects in the world are by Accenture Federal. Next slide, please. The other aspect I wanted to highlight, NIST risk management framework goes hand in hand with the work we do day in, day out with the cyber practice that we have. We have over 20 years of experience helping our clients secure their organization. We have 350 plus patents related to security worldwide. We support multitude of clients, and we have over 5,000 security risks mitigated per year. Next slide, please. So it was really important for all of us to understand what are the key RMF challenges that the industry is facing. A couple of the items that, what we've encountered, and I'm sure many of our customers are also wondering, I have a new product online. Well, how much time is it actually going to take me to get through the ATO process? Is it going to be 12 months, 18 months, in even some cases, 24 months? So the lead time for current assessment and authorization efforts has been a huge concern for some of our clients. Outside of that, assessment and authorization activities are looked at as manual labor in this case. We have so much paperwork we have to do to bring products to the market. There's also several different reporting mechanisms we have to take into account. FISMA reporting for the GAO audits, several different compliance frameworks that we as an organization and many of our clients actually have to encounter. Overall, an integrated front. we've seen multiple silos that our customers have had to actually come across. So how do we actually give them one overall solution for all the oversight mechanisms that are in place? And last but not the least, people consider RMF as a huge cost for compliance. But how can we actually make it a repeatable process for them? The other thing that I want to point out here is what we've been seeing in industry as well is the concept of let's move from traditional RMF processes to more so an ongoing authorization model. There have been many conversations across DoD about fast track ATO, organizational risk tolerance baseline. How do we actually pull it all together? Also, NIST came out with revision 5. Now, for the last several years, everyone has been focusing on NIST RMF framework revision 4. There's also NIST 837 that has come out with revision 2. But how do we actually incorporate all these ongoing security requirements? Next slide, please. So that's where we came up. We understand our customer's problem. We understand what we have to do in terms of meeting all our regulation requirements. Hence, we came up with the cyber assurance integration framework. The key thing I want to highlight about Accenture cyber assurance integration framework is it integrates information assurance and DevSecOps automation to enable and accelerate our assessment and authorization processes. The thought process here is you have touch once, report many solution. So we've built together an enterprise-wide single solution that will help you meet your compliance requirements. So one would ask, why are you actually even doing this? Time has gone that we think of ATO or ANA activities as an afterthought. We have built our environment. Okay, now all I need to do is get into production. Let's get our ATO. No, we need to think about security from the get-go. The thought process here is let's take our security requirements and shift it to the left. This allows for us to save time and cost, and it's also integrated as part of our system development lifecycle. Again, we're not thinking through it from the perspective we only need to develop security documentation, but we need to actually protect and defend against malicious threat activities and threat actors that actually take place. We wanted to provide a risk-based proactive approach to meet all their security requirements. And last but not the least, include automation as part of it. With all the solutions in the market today, how do we make that happen? How do we meet those RMF requirements? How do I get all my test results done? And that's where cyber assurance integration framework comes into play. Next slide, please. So I just don't want to talk about a framework here. We want to talk about where we've actually implemented this. With working with our clients, these are the real-time CAF results that you guys see. We've been able to implement CAF for many of our DoD and federal civilian clients. We've reduced the overall time to achieve an IL6 ATO by 50%. We've developed accelerated ANA package development as well as ATO approval by 75%, migrating to an IL5 environment. Imagine, we're talking about 12 to 18 months. Those days are gone. The thought process here is let's rock and roll and get through our ATO in a short amount of time frame, but not again, putting our security requirements at risk. We have to keep those in mind. We've also streamlined our overall ANA package development across many of our information systems within 3 months. Again, long gone are the days of 12 to 18 months, short amount of time frame. We've also worked across 21 financial systems, and we've performed RMF gap analysis, reducing their overall testing time to over 50%. Next slide, please. So what we've came up with, in addition to the cyber assurance integration framework, is our compliance innovation. What you see here today, and what on the slides more specifically, is the chatbot RPA functionality that we've built in with the cyber assurance integration framework. We call it the CAF Automation. So what does this do for us? It creates a repeatable processes for us to meet our DevSecOps requirement, as well as our continuous monitoring requirements. We're focused on continuous authorization, not one time, let's go through our ATO process every 3 years, but let's make sure that we're meeting our requirements on a continuous basis. Security validation. We provide ongoing proof that we have all our controls in place. And then at the same time, we're meeting it and enhancing our security posture. Next slide, please. So what does actually CAF automation look like? The thought process here is we'll have a single integrated view, which will provide us an overall holistic view into the cyber assurance process. Our cyber assurance requirements, RMF requirements, FISCAM requirements for those who have to meet the FISCAM requirements as well. But we use that, again, the intelligent automation platform to be able to do that. We use chatbot functionality to do our security categorization, control selection, even for that matter, developing our test results. We also integrate with Tenable Nessus to get our STIC compliance reports together, to get our IAVA compliance reports together. What also I wanted to highlight here that you might be seeing on the slide is with the CAF automation that we've built in, you can see that we are able to integrate with ServiceNow. We can create a ticket in ServiceNow and it pre-populates the forms for you. The main highlight here is the API integration that we've built on top of that. We can integrate with EMAS, CSAM, Exacta to be able to provide that one-stop shop, that one central view to see where you stand from how many vulnerabilities you have in your environment to how many controls that you actually have implemented or what is out of compliance. Outside of that, where you can see your main threat vectors are. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Will Coffey, who's going to discuss further on how we work very closely with ServiceNow to develop the overall CAF automation and ServiceNow integration.
Thanks, Khushbu. I appreciate that. And thanks, Matt, for the introduction earlier on. So my name is Will Coffey. I'm in our digital platforms practice. I focus on ServiceNow. Specifically, I'm focusing on the security operations and integrated risk management portions of the ServiceNow platform. Of the 48 certified master architects in the world, I'm one of them. So when we talk about where we're at in federal, our federal practice currently has 2 of those certified master architects. And what that means is that we're looking at the overall capabilities of ServiceNow as a platform and being able to take the holistic views of those things and put them together. One of the things we've done is with our CAF automation and with our integrated risk management capability, the platform, we looked to partner with ServiceNow so that we could create that industry best practice and driven approach to automating and accelerating the ATO process to help reduce the amount of time spent on things like generating the assessment and authorization package, managing that process through the RMF steps, and reducing the amount of time spent on manual tasks during the continuous monitoring phase while making it easy to do the day-to-day work. Ultimately, what we wanted to do is simplify the compliance of compliance. So what we've done is we have built in partnership with ServiceNow, helping them understand how the actual challenges within the industry with our clients from real world examples can be solved using the ServiceNow platform. So they built the continuous continuous assessment and monitoring capability on top of their IRM platform. What we did was we built an additive approach that has our CAF component with the ServiceNow capabilities also built on top of CAM and IRM. So we've helped to accelerate the capabilities that you're getting from the risk management framework piece by adding things like automation up front for information categorizations, Aligning some of our national security system compliance pieces that align to NIST 859. We've added a portal component that helps with the UI UX, better user interface for defining what those initial information categorizations are. We've added a dashboard. We've added POAMs. We've helped try to make all of that automation that is typically a manual process up front be built into ServiceNow, so that we can accelerate that entire timeline and reduce the amount of time it takes to get through your ANA, get through your ATO, and the amount of time that you're spending on continuous monitoring. Next slide, please. If we're looking at how we have taken CAF and how we've taken ServiceNow and built that into the overall process, we look at the intelligent automation that's provided by CAF through things like the chatbot that help us populate those pieces of the ServiceNow puzzle that get us to steps 1 and 2 and 6 of the RMF process. The new CAM application that ServiceNow is bringing kind of builds into the middle. And what we're doing is blowing out some of those additional capabilities that ServiceNow has brought and adding more to it so that that simplification of the process overall allows you to have a more holistic end-to-end ANA process, ATO process, continuous monitoring process. What that really means is you don't have to worry about manually selecting controls. Once you do your system categorizations and your information types, it's going to define those things for you. It's going to define your confidentiality. It's going to define your integrity. It's going to define your availability. Will define your system impact, which will define your controls. And then you'll have the ability to add overlays on top of those so that if you have additional controls or inherited controls from any other systems, you can bring those in as well, which will then reduce the amount of time that you have to spend going through and defining where are we overlapping, where are we overlaying, where are we inheriting, how are we assessing against these things, where are we able to assess our boundaries quickly and efficiently. The other piece that we're looking at is when we're going through the accreditation process, how are we using workflow built within the ServiceNow platform to be able to drive that authorization. When we're looking at the existing manual processes and the way that people are doing it now, it's a lot of Excel spreadsheets that are driven by, hey, I need the ISSO or ISSM or AO to be able to review these things. I need to put together a report. Well, with ServiceNow and the dashboarding capability and all of the containment of that data within the assessment and authorization process in one record, we can see that consolidated view. We can see where things are at. We can see what the information types are. We can see what the risks are. We can see the attestations of the implementation of those controls into the environment, so that when the ISSO or ISSM or AO gets to review and approve what is being done, they don't have to look at it across a lot of different spreadsheets or different documents. They can see it in one place. And the other part of that is they can look at it along the way. They can see how things are progressing. They can see how the workflow is managing across all of the different areas of the RMF process. So it will significantly reduce, as Khushbu showed, significantly reduces the amount of time it takes to get through the process overall, which is a huge paradigm shift for our federal customers. And we know that sometimes the processes are different. Sometimes the compliance systems that you have to use on the back end are different. So if you're using EMAS or if you're using CSAM or Exacta, whatever those things are going to be, the system works with all of those things. So looking across, if you're using DoD processes or if you're using DHS processes, it doesn't really matter to us, right? We want to make sure that everything that we've built is built in a way that integrates seamlessly with ServiceNow, integrates across the CAF capability, and then integrates into the federal overall environment for compliance and managing that compliance within the federal network. So we've taken a lot of our capabilities out of the platform overall to make sure that what we have defined, what we are defining, how we're driving the workflow, how we're going end to end on these things is built in a way that it really amplifies the capabilities of your platform overall, which just generally brings you more value to the process and to your platform leveraging, platform use, excuse me. Next slide, please. So the last part of what I want to talk about is when we're looking at things like API integrations and API ingestions, those capabilities to be able to do configuration compliance, to be able to do vulnerability scanning and map those against the controls for the continuous monitoring piece, and for the easy export of the capability to the compliance platforms that exist. Like all of those things are coming together within CAF, within CAM, and within the RMF accelerators that we've built on top of those within ServiceNow. It really does define the simplified end-to-end process for overall assessment authorization, RMF definitions of the ATO process and into your overall continuous monitoring. Next slide, please. So I'm gonna let Matt or Khushbu talk a little bit about this, but I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you guys. I know we have some information on the screen right now about some of the upcoming events. So look forward to showing you. This one will actually be a demonstration of the capabilities, but I won't steal Matt's thunder on this one. So I'll let him talk a little bit more about this.
Oh, not my thunder. This is going to be another joint one.
Yeah.
This is so today's presentation was kind of the opener, the intro, if you will. Our next presentation on 2028 is the deep dive, and that's where we're going to have ServiceNow product management and AFS developers go through and really do a step-by-step demo and get you deep into the application itself. Yep. So hey, Will, if you're good to go, why don't we open it up to questions and see what the audience is thinking right now?
Absolutely.
Teresa, Lisa, do we have any inbound questions?
Not yet. We hope we get some soon.
Gotcha.
Actually,
I'm
I
just
do
checking
see
out
one.
the
There's
chat.
one in the chat. It says, in order to review and validate the controls, the procedures, and SOP are integrated and easy to monitor updates and version.
Ah, okay. Well, do you
want to talk a
take
little
that?
bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Jose, to specifically answer your question, how do we go about reviewing and validating the controls procedures? We have the ability, especially with the CAF automation piece that we've built in, that we can go ahead and put in the procedures, upload them, and compare it against the NIST test results requirements that we have to actually keep in mind. So what it does is with the automation piece, we use OCR to review what the requirements are and compare it with the documents overall. And accordingly, we can identify, the control implementation statements, which will also help us build our system security plan, but at the same time also assess the results.
Yeah, and I can tell you from the ServiceNow side, when it comes to reviewing and validating controls, ServiceNow Integrated Risk Management does have a complete set of processes and life cycles around controls, which doesn't mean just knowing what the controls are and assigning them out to your people and processes and assets, but it also means ensuring that the controls are tested on a regular basis, that they're continuously monitored in an automated fashion. So one of the things we do with that is we give you special functionality just for describing like control tests and the ability to test the operation of a control in addition to the design and report those results back in the platform. So unlike some environments that I think many of us have lived in the past, where a lot of that information was shuffled around in spreadsheets and email, and there's a lot of kind of manual aggregation and normalization, it's all contained in the platform for you. And the beautiful thing about that is it gives you perspective at the highest levels. So you can very easily see what your entire agency risk is, or what's your entire agency's RMF compliance. But you get that individual control fidelity. So it's very easy to drill down and look at, say, the result of a control test or the current compliance of a single control or a single risk against a single asset or a single process. So yep, the capability is absolutely in there for you. And I did notice that Lisa just pasted a whole list of upcoming risk management events for everybody. That's wonderful. Some of these do span into other areas. There's vendor risk, and I see business continuity, as well as the CAM and RMF session on the 28th.
And there is actually another question in there too, Matt.
Oh, did I miss one?
Yep, Teresa shared asking if this is just focused on NIST RMF or is it focused on NIST CSF as well?
Thank you for your sharp eyes.
Yeah,
so, you know, I tell you what, Will, that I'll approach from the ServiceNow side, and then you can talk to CAF a little bit. We did build the continuous authorization and monitoring application in direct response to lots of federal customers who said, hey, ServiceNow is awesome. We think this would be, you know, the ideal place to do RMF, and we need help with that. So it was purpose built to RMF. That doesn't mean it only applies to RMF though. There's a lot of additional frameworks out there. There's CSF, there's some ISO standards, CMMC, there's new ones coming up all the time. And these are being adopted by much more than just the federal community we're used to. You know, certainly anyone who's been around for a while remembers DICAP and FSMA and DITSCAP and the sort. But you know, the US government made that investment in people and thought leadership and all of the footwork into going to and building this extremely mature framework. And it is a very mature framework, and it's very well thought out. It's not necessarily the easiest to implement and automate on the execution side of things, but it makes perfect sense as a framework. And a lot of organizations are turning it to it now. Regulated utilities, high risk industries, right, like financials. Other governments, state and local governments, hospital systems are now recognizing the need for an extremely mature set of practices, an extremely mature framework. And they're looking at what the US government built and saying, that's it, we're going to adopt that. So while CAM was built for RMF, it absolutely helps with any of those other frameworks as well. They're all very similar. Determine the risk of the system, and there might be more or less steps involved in that. Determine what controls we need to apply and monitor those controls. And that's essentially what we're doing in CAM. Will, can you talk to CSF and CAF?
I can. So I have some particular thoughts on this, and I know that Khushbu, I'm sure you do as well. When we were looking at how can we holistically address across the integrated risk management framework overall, especially within the ServiceNow platform, we looked at incorporating not only the IRM/GRC, depending on how you want to talk about it, capabilities that ServiceNow provides, but the security operations capabilities that it also provides. So things like your vulnerability management, your threat intelligence, and your security incident response pieces that come into that. In particular, vulnerability management directly ties to the integrated risk management portion. And when we look at the cybersecurity framework and we talk about the identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover portions of it, that goes into the controls. So how are we leveraging something like Tenable or ACAS for configuration compliance, vulnerability management against specific controls in the subset that's defined for the authorization boundary that we're in, and taking that vulnerability management, tying it into response detection and response as part of our continuous monitoring efforts, and then expanding that across both sections of not only RMF, but CSF as well. So we do that, right? And when you're doing things like POAMs and you're doing things like vulnerability management in response to specific controls, identifying the attestations that are aligned to the response of those things, we wanted to make sure that we're looking at this from the most holistic point possible so we could provide the easiest management overall. Because if you're only doing part of it, that's great, but it's still manual efforts on the other side. So we want to bring that capability for automation that is built into the platform, and that intelligent automation that we have through the AI component to both of them, right? So we're able to take a spreadsheet that once took 4 hours to complete and get it done in 2 minutes. we're able to take vulnerability mapping between controls that used to have to be done manually, and we're completing it automatically now. So all of those things do come together in one holistic, I hate this term because it's a super salesy term, but the single pane of glass, right? We talk about it that way. Khushbu, I'd like to, I know you've got some thoughts on that as well, so I'd like to give you the opportunity.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Will, and thank you, Matt. So the key things, when we're thinking through this, right? I mean, we, as Matt mentioned and Will mentioned, we're not just looking at the NIST risk management framework. We are definitely looking at all the security compliance requirements that do exist today. So we've done an analysis of what it entails, and a good chunk of it has that basis of NIST 853 controls. So as I had indicated earlier, we have some agencies have the financial requirements that you have to meet, which is the FISCAM requirements. But what we did was we built a overall crosswalk to look through where the similarities are, as well as where the gaps are. And hence we came up with CAF. So we can truly actually meet all those requirements. If an agency has 3 regulatory requirements, how do we actually make that happen? So with the innovation factor that we've added, and as Will indicated, I mean, think about it, right? If I'm doing the SecOps, if I have the SecOps module integrated, and I need to develop all my STIG compliance reports or my IEVA compliance reports, or even overall vulnerability management compliance report, if I can do that in minutes, that's so much more time that I can actually focus on the security mission at hand that I have for my organization. And with the chatbot RPA functionality that we have, I mean, think about it, right? If I have to go through my security categorization process and it's taking me 1 to 2 weeks just to go through the security categorization with various stakeholders, if I can now do that in a matter of hours, get my categorization form completed and get it through the ATO approval process, that's a lot of time savings. And that's where we pull it all together using that intelligent automation platform.
Yeah,
I believe we have more questions.
There are. I'm actually looking at the questions and answers right now. There's 3 in the Q&A section. I'm going to read the first one, and then I think the second 2 can be grouped together. But the first one is, how can we get our hands on CAF? How is it priced? And has it been used at clients already?
All right, I'm happy to answer that. So we do have our contact information listed towards the end of the slide. So if you are interested in knowing how it's going to be priced, definitely feel free to reach out to us and we can discuss further. Also, in terms of how you can get your hands on CAF, we can talk about next steps. So, our email address is listed, as you can see on the screen. In terms of has it been used at clients already? CAF processes absolutely have been used with our DoD and IC clients and several of our other federal clients that we are implementing it live. If this question is more specific about has CAF Automation been implemented already, we are in the processes of doing that today. So whoever asked that question, I hope I answered your question.
No, that's perfect. That's from anonymous attendee. So that's good. And then the second and third question are related, but I'm going to read them both and then we can talk about, I have a portion of the answer and then Khushbu, I'll let you speak into this as well. So the first part of it is, Anne asks, can this be used for IL5 at this time? So the answer is yes and no. The answer is yes if you have a self-hosted or on-prem instantiation of ServiceNow that lives in an IL5 environment. You can do it there and you can use that because right now, ServiceNow and the Gov Community Cloud, the GCC is IL4. Now, I think that there's some activity around bringing that to the next level, but at this time it is IL4. But you can use it if you have a self-hosted or on-prem instantiation of ServiceNow. The second question is, would multi-classified environments, NIPR, SIPR, top secret, etc., require separate ServiceNow instances, or can ServiceNow integrate the information into a single pane of glass? Now, That's a semi multifaceted answer, right? You would want to have multiple instances across the different domains, just because you can't have Nipper Sipper, JWix all on one platform. I suppose you can if it's at the JWix level, right? Everything's going to flow up. Nothing's ever going to flow down. But you can, at the highest levels, take the data, do cross-domain data sharing, but it's really going to flow one direction, which is up. So you can flow your Nipper up, you can flow your Sipper up into JWix or whatever it's going to be, and have that holistic view at the most secure level. It wouldn't go down. If you wanted to look at Nipper data only, you would have to be in the unclassed environment on the NipperNet, looking at it there. So you can have that single pane of glass, but it would have to be at the most classified levels so it can roll up. But you would have to have multiple instantiations of ServiceNow across those security domains. But that's architecturally the decision of however you want to put it together. Though I hope that was from Abel.
Yeah.
Matt, Kushbu, do you guys have any questions on that?
I think there's some variation in that as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, ServiceNow is currently deployed in every classification domain you can think of, and absolutely plenty of multi-domain environments. I think it really starts boiling down to kind of the enterprise architecture. So, ServiceNow itself doesn't necessarily need to connect to everything. For instance, if you want to bring vulnerability management data in and bring your ACAS results in, use ServiceNow to drive the remediation processes around that, use that to feed your RMF. If you already have existing processes for, say, someone doing a network scan in one domain or one enclave, and then somehow getting that into your security center in ACAS, right? We just need to talk to that security center. So in that case, we wouldn't have to be present in that enclave ourselves. But I think it does start boiling down to kind of agency enterprise architecture and specific use cases from my perspective.
I agree.
I believe we have some more questions that Teresa's posted in here. So I'll tackle those if, Will, you're good with it as well.
Go ahead. Yeah, please.
How would you handle RMF for existing systems that are already accredited? And that's definitely something to think through, right? I mean, the whole thought process being, okay, you have to go through an ATA process every 3 years, that's no longer the case. With continuous authorization, ongoing authorization in play, what we do very specifically, not only with CAF Automation, but with also, and Matt, please do answer this from the ServiceNow perspective, but I'll speak here on the CAF Automation side, is we've built in those continuous monitoring requirements. We have the list of controls identified that are prioritized. We have our Kanban knowledge base that you would essentially use to go ahead and see what your new accreditation requirements, quote unquote, are going to be. So if I'm an existing system, I've already gotten my accreditation. Now, the main focus point is, should I worry about it to just get my ATO in the next 3 years? That's not the thought process here. We have those controls environment. You can use the RPA, chatbot RPA functionality, and it has the list of controls listed for you. You'd respond to that. We'd have our test results automated. And then again, if you're using EMAS or CSAM, you can upload those test results in there as well. Matt, do you want to add from the CAM perspective for existing systems?
I completely agree. I mean, when I first started off as a government contractor, our concept of security was do all your inspections, then come back 3 years later. Obviously, the rate of technology has eclipsed that, and the entire government now is hopefully at or moving towards the concept of continuous monitoring. So I view RMF really as kind of two major halves of the pie. I view it as a lot of administrative effort, the control selection and categorization, and there's certainly challenges to that. But then there's that whole second half of continuous monitoring, which is the technical challenge. And this is where I hear a lot of struggle I hear a lot of C-levels telling me that we just don't have visibility into the assets in the network that we need, that we have trouble with the volume of data coming in from the sensor layer, from ACAS and other technologies and SIMs, and then trying to correlate that all to risk and manage it and assign thresholds and quantify it. And that's really where ServiceNow excels. The platform approach we take of having everything in a shared data model, essentially, literally a single database, and all these unique applications across so many different domains gives us really a very unfair advantage there. So I brought up ACAS a few minutes ago, and I talked about bringing results in from ACAS and then running them through something like our vulnerability response product. Well, that gives you a whole workflow for managing the vulnerability remediation cycle. But because it is the same platform, the same data model, right? It's, we're able to take that and monitor that within CAM and use that as a data feed for continuous monitoring, as just one example. And while that's possible to do with any technology, with legacy technologies, that typically involves a lot of custom integration work. And then you have to bring in things like any sort of work automation, right? Do we have a ticketing system, some sort of work tracking system? Now we have to integrate with that. And now we need our metrics and visualizations, and that's another system, right? ServiceNow brings all of that together in one platform. So I think the Kanban perspective of it is extremely valuable. I think that's a very good question. I think you'd be very pleasantly surprised by what the capabilities are there. I saw that we also had a question from Mike Goodman asking about SLAs between systems. So I don't know if it's something your team is prepared to discuss. SLAs are a little bit outside of my personal expertise with CAM.
Yeah.
ServiceNow does have the ability to apply SLAs and monitor performance against activities and against the SLAs. And I will say that ServiceNow has a very strong concept of systems depending on other systems. So the second half of Mike's question is, I have an SLA here, but I depend on this other business service. So at the very, very core of ServiceNow is this thing called the CMDB, the Configuration Management Database, which is essentially the mother of all asset databases, right? It has this wonderful schema that accounts for every detail about an asset you can think of, and any type of asset, not just computers, not just switches and routers, but phones and OT and SCADA systems. It can all be implemented in there. And there's discovery that goes around that, of course. But one of the really big things about that CMDB is it is service aware. So it not only knows everything about the configuration of that asset and maintains that central ground truth for the entire agency, but it also understands how assets depend on other assets or are depended upon. Not just a technical perspective, but a business service perspective. So we have a concept of, this is a Windows server, but this Windows server is part of this analysis stack here, which is part of this, Intel system here, or weapons platform, or this other major program, and how it impacts those. So while SLAs are kind of outside of my realm, and I think outside of the realm of the products we're talking about today, we do have the capability to implement SLAs and monitor against them. And we absolutely have a deep understanding of how systems depend on each other. So I wouldn't be at all surprised to find out that we can absolutely show an SLA dependency. To get the full answer on that with 100% confidence, I would have to turn to some other folks internally, which I'd be glad to do for you if you want to ping me offline.
Yeah, and Matt, if I could just add to that real quick is, I don't think we're addressing that right now in this capability that we're putting out. I think it's something to pay attention to, but in line with what Matt is saying, the other thing that ServiceNow brings to the table is the common services data model, right? So if you're looking at CSDM and the implementation of CSDM, it does align those things for the SLA capabilities, right? Your business capabilities, your business applications, your information objects, your application services, your service offerings, and everything that falls into those things, which is a lot of stuff. But there are ways to align the target systems and the service mapping of those systems to SLAs, but the focus of what we're doing here is not necessarily overlapping those things, but more how are we maintaining the compliance on top of those things? But it's possible, right? The possibility is there to extend the capabilities of the platform to address those things.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'd be glad to follow up offline and try to get some more details around that. We do have a couple more questions that came in. Khushbu, I think this one is probably perfect for you or Will. How do you intend to meet? Basically, it's revision 5. How do you intend to meet the NIST RMF revision 5 requirements?
No, definitely a wonderful question there. So NIST revision 5 actually was introduced to the public last week. I know a draft was already released, so the final one came out, if I recall correctly, September 23rd. We have already done our pre-analysis based on the draft version that had come out to meet the NIST revision 5 requirement. We also have conducted a detailed gap analysis of where the differences are. So in preparation for CAF automation more specifically, and again, as we work through with ServiceNow hand in hand, we did account for the revision 5 update. So in the event if our agency that we're supporting wants to meet those requirements, we're prepared to actually address them as well.
Awesome. And then we got a really interesting question about essentially adapting this to DevOps. So the question is asking literally, are you using Flow Designer? How flexible can this be modified to integrate with DevOps? So Flow Designer is a specific capability within ServiceNow. It's basically a drag and drop GUI, a no code or maybe a little bit of code way of building complex workflows and automations. And you can use it to automate actions within ServiceNow, such as creating a ticket or changing the state of something. But you can also use it to interact with systems outside of ServiceNow. I've used Flow Designer to make REST calls out to other systems and bring data in and process things based on that. So the CAM application itself doesn't literally use Flow Designer. It has the flows baked in. But you can use Flow Designer on anything you want anywhere in ServiceNow, very literally. When you go build a flow with Flow Designer, the first thing that asks you is what you want to trigger. And very often that trigger might be a scheduled job, but typically it's based on changes or updates to a certain table, i.e. when a new security incident is created that meets these conditions, or an update over here that meets these conditions is built. So you can definitely use Flow for this. Now for DevOps specifically, that's a great question. DevOps is sweeping the nation. It's a great move. I was practicing software security way back in the day when it was really the realm of penetration testers, and it's been remarkable watching it just move left so much and see so many capabilities in DevOps now. DevOps, as it comes to RMF, is kind of a new challenge. You still have all the requirements of RMF and all the security concerns, but you need extreme agility there. Right? As developers are building and code may be committing 100 times a day. Now, we do have a dedicated DevOps product within ServiceNow that can help with that. But what I'll say is that CAM is capable of performing monitoring against any data in the ServiceNow system or any data that can be brought in, right? So if data exists in another system, we need to bring that in for monitoring. We can build a flow for that, or we can use other techniques. And then it can be continuously monitored via our indicators, which are essentially little data robots that just look at all the tables and look for changes. So tying that back to your RMF controls and risks is certainly feasible. There's always details like how you want issues directed back, and you might have different risk thresholds for something in development. I think determining those thresholds is one of the key areas for a lot of customers, right? What standards do we really want to hold them to before a certain build can be released to the new gate? And where do we want to do that? Do we want to do security testing before it passes the automated functional testing or afterwards? So I think there's going to be a lot of flexibility in there, but you can certainly use these applications and these processes to monitor what's going on in DevOps.
And Matt, I actually wanted to address it from a CAF automation perspective.
Please.
So from a CAF automation and DevOps perspective, CAF is actually built on information assurance and DevSecOps framework. So we do account for shifting left of the security requirements. It's included as part of the system development lifecycle from the get-go, right? So we do we use agile processes to do the testing as it's actually being built, as the code is being developed. We run the code scans, we do the analysis, and we also meet the RMF requirements from the get-go. So, as I had indicated a little bit earlier during our webinar, is no longer are we thinking of ATO as a final activity right before going into production. It is integrated from the beginning.
As it should be, and as it was always intended. That's excellent.
Yep. We have a few more questions. Matt, I think this one's for you. Is the CMDB schema extensible?
It is. Yep, it absolutely is. So you can take existing portions of the schema that we've created and create new portions on it, add and remove to it. You can, and then of course the wonderful thing is you can build automation around that specific new schema and monitor for changes in the sort. In fact, let me say this: everything in ServiceNow is extensible. It is. If you've never done any real kind of power user work with it before, it's an incredibly open, transparent, flexible platform to work with. But that said, I'm not the master architect. We're very fortunate to have one of the 48. Well, I'm going to start calling Will 1 out of 48, like Star Trek. 1 of 48. So Will, do you want to speak to that a little bit and how you can extend ServiceNow and talk about building on the platform?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to answer it just the same way you did, which is, is the CMDB schema extensible? Absolutely. I mean, and that is the basis of the platform, your ability to extend and use the platform as it is to be able to create that flexibility for what you're trying to do or relate across the different data types that are in the system is one of the primary benefits of ServiceNow overall. I mean, when you're looking to bring more data to light or relate more data to do more things, that platform flexibility and that platform extensibility is really going to be one of the key things that drives all of that stuff. So the ability to do that is absolutely there. And it's definitely something that we take advantage of all the time, because that allows us to leverage the data that we need in the places that we need it to be able to execute the flows in the way that we want them to support our customers' missions. So it's really the overall extensibility and flexibility of the platform is just, it's really phenomenal. So
yeah. It's one of those products where the more I work with it, the more impressed I am.
Yeah, it does a lot. It does a lot of stuff.
It does a lot, but I appreciate how it makes things. It does a lot, but it does it in a way, in a presentation that makes it very easy to understand and work with. And what I love about it is if I'm building a capability for someone, it does so much for me that all I have to worry about really is what I call the micro logic, right?
Yep. Which actually kind of goes into the last question, and we have 1 minute left. I don't know if we want to wrap or get to it, but can we explain what's truly automated and how can you meet the continuous monitoring requirements? I would say, reach out to one of us, because I'm happy to join the next webinar and you'll see it. But 2, if you have questions, I'm happy to walk through it with you. I know Khushbu's happy to walk through it with you. Matt's happy to walk through it with you. So reach out to one of us and we'll be happy to talk through that in more depth. So that's all I've got on that one.
Yep, and as indicated, our contact information is listed, so do not hesitate to reach out to us. So Matt, with that, we will turn it over to you. And again, thank you so much, everyone, for hearing us out today. And we look forward to hearing from you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your time and participation.
Yeah, thank you, Will and Khushbu. Your partnership on this has been very valuable and very important and very welcome. And I appreciate your contributions here on the webinar today even. So with that, really all I can say at this point is thank you so much. We're all living in some pretty crazy times. For those of us who are still kind of stuck working at home, it's funny how at first that sounds like a benefit.